Ladies and gentlemen, listen closely. Just because he looks calm on the outside doesn't mean nothing is happening on the inside. Some men don't show attachment the way movies and social media tell you they should. They don't always text more, call more, or suddenly become poetic. Sometimes the man who feels the most shows the least. And if you don't understand the signs, you'll walk away from someone who is already emotionally invested. When a man keeps reappearing in your life, even while acting distant, you need to understand the difference between emotional withdrawal and emotional detachment. A man who truly has no interest doesn't manage distance. He exits, clean, quiet, done. But when he's hooked, even if he's confused about his feelings or trying to control them, he doesn't stay gone. He checks your stories, reacts to something small, sends a random message that could have waited, asks a simple question he could have answered himself. These are not accidents. Re-entry is intention without confession. He may slow the pace, but he doesn't break the line. You'll notice the pattern isn't loud. It's subtle and repeatable. Just when the connection feels like it's fading, there he is again. Liking, replying, asking, showing up. That's because emotional investment creates mental presence, and mental presence creates behavioral gravity. People drift toward what occupies their thoughts. Even a reserved man will orbit what matters to him. Distance becomes measured, not permanent. Sometimes he creates practical excuses to restart contact. A recommendation, a question, a shared reference, a callback to an old conversation. It may look casual, but it's deliberate. Men rarely reopen doors they don't care about. Pride alone prevents that. Reappearance means the connection is still active in his mind. You might also see that he never lets tension sit too long. If there's a misunderstanding or a pause, he eventually breaks the silence. Not with a dramatic speech, often with something small and normal. That's emotional risk management. He wants the bridge intact, even if he's not ready to run across it. Watch consistency of return, not consistency of chatter. High interest doesn't always produce high frequency, but it does produce repeated approach. He doesn't vanish into the void. He stays within reach. That repeated presence is a quiet admission that you still occupy mental space, emotional curiosity, and relational possibility. When a man remembers small personal details you shared without you repeating them, that's not politeness. That's attention with emotional relevance. Most people hear information, but they don't store it unless it matters to them. When he recalls the name of your favorite coffee, the story about your cousin, the date of your presentation, or the food you said you can't stand, it shows he wasn't just listening to respond, he was listening to retain. Selective, and the heart helps decide what gets saved. Men especially tend to filter conversations for usefulness or importance. If he brings up something minor you mentioned once in passing, it means your words registered beyond the surface. You might even be surprised when he connects dots between things you said weeks apart. That kind of recall comes from mental replay. People revisit conversations in their minds when the person speaking has significance to them. This also shows up in how he adjusts his behavior based on what you've shared. Maybe you mentioned you get nervous before interviews, and he checks in that morning. Maybe you said loud places overwhelm you, and he suggests somewhere quieter. That's applied memory, not just recall, but consideration. It signals that your comfort and preferences are active factors in his decisions. Another clue is when he references your past statements during new discussions. He might say, I remember you said you wanted to start that project, or didn't you tell me? Your mother loves that kind of music. He's not collecting facts. He's building a mental profile. That's what people do when they are emotionally engaged and relationally curious. Detailed memory also indicates he values accuracy with you. He wants to get things right. He doesn't want to confuse your story with someone else's or treat your experiences as interchangeable. That mental separation is a form of respect and attachment. You'll notice he doesn't announce that he remembers. It comes out naturally. No performance, no scorekeeping, just recall woven into conversation. That's because genuine attention doesn't try to prove itself. It simply shows up through precision, follow-up, and thoughtful references that reveal you were heard the first time you spoke. When his tone or behavior shifts when other men are mentioned, It reveals emotional stake, even if he tries to keep his composure. Interest creates awareness of competition. A man who feels nothing stays neutral, relaxed, unchanged. But a man who is mentally and emotionally invested cannot stay completely unaffected when another male presence enters the conversation. The change is often subtle. A pause before he answers, a tighter voice, a follow-up question that sounds casual but carries weight. He may ask, "Who's that?" or "How do you know him?" in a way that sounds light but isn't empty. This reaction isn't always jealousy in the dramatic sense. It's more like territorial curiosity mixed with emotional alertness. When feelings are involved, the brain automatically evaluates risk to company. Connection. He wants context. He wants clarity. Not because he owns you, but because he values his position with you and wants to understand where he stands. Emotional investment creates sensitivity to potential rivals. Sometimes the shift shows up as humor or teasing. He might joke about the other guy, downplay him, or make a playful remark that subtly tests your response. Humor becomes a safe tool to gather information without appearing insecure. Other times he grows slightly quieter, more observant, letting you talk while he listens more carefully than before. Silence in that moment is not disinterest, it's processing. You may also notice he increases engagement right after such mentions. He texts more, asks more about your day, becomes more present in conversation. That's not coincidence. Perceived competition often activates effort. When the possibility of losing attention appears, priority rises. Body language, if you're in person, gives this away even faster. Eye focus sharpens. Posture changes. Responses become quicker or more controlled. Micro expressions flash, surprise, concern, calculation, then disappear behind calm behavior. Men who are trying to manage their feelings work harder to look unaffected, which ironically creates the detectable shift. What matters is pattern, not a single reaction. One question means little. Consistent tonal change, curiosity, or increased attentiveness whenever another man is mentioned points to emotional involvement that he may not openly declare but cannot fully hide. When he asks subtle, future-oriented questions about your life and plans, it often means he is quietly trying to understand whether you fit into a longer timeline. In his mind. Men who are not emotionally invested usually stay in the present tense. Their questions stay surface level. What you're doing today, what you did yesterday, how your weekend was. But when a man is mentally hooked, his curiosity stretches forward. He starts exploring your direction, your goals, your preferences about lifestyle, family, work, and location. Not in a formal interview style, but woven naturally into conversation. He might ask where you see yourself living in a few years, what kind of career path you really want, whether you prefer stability or adventure, how you feel about marriage, or what kind of environment makes you happiest. These questions are not random fillers. They are compatibility probes. He's not just learning about you, he's measuring alignment, quietly, privately, without announcing that he's evaluating long-term potential. Often he keeps these questions indirect to avoid pressure or exposure. Instead of saying, "I'm thinking about a future with you," he'll say, "Would you ever move for the right opportunity? Or do you think people should build a business before settling down?" He speaks in hypotheticals because hypotheticals feel safer than declarations. They let him gather emotional data without revealing emotional risk. You'll also notice he remembers your answers and sometimes revisits them later with variations. That repetition isn't forgetfulness, it's verification. When something matters, people double-check it. He wants to see if your views are consistent, flexible, or evolving. Consistency signals reliability, which matters when someone is imagining long-range connection. Another sign is that he sometimes places himself inside those future scenarios casually. He might say, "I could see you doing well in a city like that." Or people with your mindset usually build strong families. He's inserting perspective that includes your future success and stability because he's emotionally invested in the outcome. Future-oriented curiosity is a planning instinct. Attraction lives in the present, but attachment thinks ahead. When his questions start stretching beyond today and tomorrow into someday, and eventually, it shows your presence is no longer temporary in his thinking, and he is mentally organizing possibilities that include your path and direction. When you pull back a little and he increases his effort and attention, it reveals where his real level of interest sits. Many people say they care, but behavior under reduced access tells the truth. When availability drops, indifference relaxes, but genuine interest activates. If he's emotionally hooked, your slight distance creates contrast, and contrast creates awareness. He notices the slower replies, the shorter conversations, the reduced initiation. And instead of fading out himself, he hands in to close the gap. This doesn't always show up as dramatic pursuit. Often it appears as small but clear increases in engagement. He messages first more often. He asks better questions. He responds faster than before. He tries to restart momentum with humor, shared topics, or invitations to talk. Effort expands to restore connection flow. That shift is not accidental. It's motivational pressure created by the fear of losing emotional access. Psychologically, when something valued becomes less available, the brain assigns it higher importance. Your reduced presence removes comfort and predictability. If he wasn't invested, your pullback would feel like relief or neutrality. But if he is invested, it feels like risk, and risk triggers action. He doesn't want the channel to close, so he reinforces it. You may also notice his tone becomes warmer or more intentional during this phase, less distracted, more direct, more present. He may reference shared moments, inside jokes, or unfinished conversations. That's reconnection behavior. He's trying to re-anchor the bond before it drifts further. Another form of increased effort is reliability. He follows through faster, confirms plans more clearly, shows up more consistently. When interest rises under distance, dependability often rises with it because he wants to strengthen his position in your perception. What makes this sign powerful is that it's reaction-based, not performance-based. It's not what he does when everything is easy and flowing. It's what he does when access is reduced and outcomes are uncertain. Effort that grows in response to space is emotionally driven behavior. It shows he is not just enjoying attention when it's freely available, but actively valuing the connection when it feels less guaranteed.